Hello all, welcome back. Today we will see around 100 plus questions which are basically asked into the PSM-1 examination. So if you guys are going to appear for the examination, I would request you to please go through this video and try to go through the videos once or twice and then appear for the examination. I guarantee that you will basically clear the examination in the very first attempt. So I will just begin with the slide and let's see what are those questions which will be there in your examination. So this is question number 1. The three pillars of empiricism are. So empiricism is the principle on which Scrum is based, right? And let's see what are the three pillars of it. So those are transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Going to question number 2. What's the function or purpose of management in Scrum? Let's see. So the management basically supports the product owner and the Scrum master. Going to question number 3. When does a developer become accountable for the value of a product backlog item selected for the sprint? Let's see. It's never. The entire Scrum team is accountable or responsible for the particular item selected in the sprint, right? Question number 4. Which statement best describes Scrum? So here we will have to see what is the definition of Scrum. Let's check. So Scrum is nothing but a framework for creating complex products in complex environments. So just take a note of this point whenever you will be asked to define Scrum or basically describe Scrum. So this is the thing which you will have to answer. Question number 5. What is the typical size for a Scrum team? Let's see. So a Scrum team basically consists of 10 members or less than that. So it's not a big team. It will not have 20, 30 or 100 members. So it will be a small team of 10 or less members. Question 6. Who is on the Scrum team? Let's see. So these are the product owners, Scrum master and developers. Question 7. Who creates the definition of done? Let's see. So it's the Scrum team. So they will create the definition of done. And definition of done is nothing but just an agreement. Like when we will cover those defined topics in the definition of done, then only a particular user story can be accepted by the entire team. Question 8. Who should know the most about the progress towards a business objective or a release and be able to explain the alternatives most clearly? Let's see. It's the product owner. So whenever we have anything which deals with business, it is basically the product owner who takes care of it. Question 9. The time box for sprint review is. So sprint review is one of the ceremonies in Scrum, and let's see what is the time box for it. So it's 4 hours or less than that. And here is a quick definition for sprint review. Let's see. So it occurs at the end of each sprint and it's focused on reviewing the work which was completed during the sprint, and we also kind of discuss what we need to do next to optimize the value of the sprint, right? Go to question number 10. Why is the daily Scrum held at the same time and same place? Let's see. To reduce complexity. Yeah, so if these meetings are held at different places and at different time intervals, then quite possible that the team members will get confused at what time which particular meeting they have to attend. So in order to reduce those complexity, it's always held at the same time and same place. Question 11. It is mandatory that the product increment be released to production at the end of each sprint. So here we will have to answer as true or false whether this statement is correct or not. Let's see. No, it's not correct. So whenever any increment is ready, we can release it to production and we will not have to wait until the end of each sprint. Question 12. The time box for the sprint planning event is. Okay, sprint planning is also one of the events in Scrum or one of the ceremonies in Scrum. Let's see what is the time box for it. So it is 8 hours or less. And here is the definition for sprint planning. Let's check. So the sprint planning, its primary purpose is to define the sprint goal and determine the work which needs to be completed during the sprint and create a plan for achieving that goal. So you can see all the planning activities happen in the sprint planning regarding a sprint, and planning is a relatively complex topic, so that's the reason the time box is very high for sprint planning. It is 8 hours or less. Going to next question. When does a developer become the sole owner of an item on the sprint backlog? Let's see. It's never. So the item belongs to the entire Scrum team. Question 14. How much work must the developers complete for each product backlog item they select for a sprint? So let's check. Enough so that the each product backlog item they select meets the DOD or definition of done. So they should work on a product or on a backlog item when the definition of done is completed. Then they can say that their work is done for that particular item. Going to question 15. When does a sprint conclude, or basically when does a sprint end? Let's see. When the sprint retrospective is completed. So sprint retrospective is the last ceremony of a sprint. When that is done, we can successfully close the sprint. Question 16. When multiple Scrum teams work together on the same product, each team should maintain a separate product backlog. So is this statement true or false? Let's check. It's false. Products have one product backlog regardless of how many Scrum teams are used. So basically, regardless of how many Scrum teams are there will just be only one product backlog for a particular product. Question 17. The purpose of sprint is to produce a valuable and useful increment of working product. So let's check. Yes, it is true. This is the whole focus of a sprint, right? Going to question 18. The Scrum team must choose at least one high priority process improvement item identified during the sprint retrospective and place it in the sprint backlog. So is this statement true or false? Let's check. It's false. So an earlier version of the Scrum guide prescribed this practice, but now it is not a mandatory one. So we can say that this is not a correct statement, right? Going to question 19. Who is required to attend the daily Scrum? Let's see. So basically the developers are required to attend the daily Scrum. If someone else needs to join them, they can basically join it, but the developers should be there, right? Question 20. Who is responsible for managing the progress of work during a sprint? So it's the developers. So they are responsible for managing the progress of work during a sprint and basically doing the work in the sprint, right? Going to question 21. Which statement best describes a product owner's responsibility? Let's check. So the product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product and the work of the Scrum team. So the product owner is also called as a value maximizer, and his duty is to maximize the value of the product which is getting developed into the sprint. So just make a note of this one. Question 22. Which Scrum events are time boxed? Let's see. So the sprint planning, sprint retrospective, sprint reviews, these are the time boxed events, as well as daily Scrum is also a time boxed event of 15 minutes, right? So keep a note of this, and just keep a note that the backlog refinement, this is not a time boxed event, means we do not have a defined time interval for it. It can happen all the time in the sprint. So the above ones are the time boxed events, and the backlog refinement is not a time boxed event. Going to next question. The product backlog is ordered by. So basically, who orders the product backlog? Whatever is deemed most appropriate by the product owner. So the product owner will have the full right to order the product backlog. Question 24. Which statement best describes the sprint review? Let's see. So the Scrum team and stakeholders inspect the outcome of a sprint and plans to do next. So this is what a sprint review is. Basically, they review the outcome of a sprint and what is required to do in the further sprints. Going to question 25. During a sprint, a developer determines that the Scrum team will not be able to complete the items in their forecast. Who should be present to review and adjust the product backlog items selected? Let's see. So it's the product owner and developers. They will meet and they will decide what they need to do. They can minimize, they can reduce the scope for the sprint, and then they can communicate it to the stakeholders. So basically the product owner and developers will decide. Question 26. Scrum is found on which idea? So it's empirism, and empirism means we learn through experience. So just keep a note of this one. This will be definitely be there in your examination. Question 27. A product owner is entitled to postpone the start of a new sprint after the conclusion of a previous sprint. So we have to say whether this statement is true or false. So this is a false statement. A new sprint starts immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. So as soon as the previous sprint ends, a new sprint begins. So the product owner has nothing to do with it. Question 28. The sprint review is the only time at which the stakeholder feedback is taken into account. Let's see. It's false. So basically a product owner is the one who regularly who is in regular connect with the stakeholders, and basically he takes their feedback and provides it to the team. Going to next question. What is the product owner accountable for in Scrum? Let's check. So he is a value maximizer, and his role is to maximize the value of product developed during the sprint, right? Question 30. What is a product backlog? Let's see. It's an emergent ordered list of what is required to improve the product. So it's a kind of a list. It will have requirements which is required basically to improve the quality of the product, and as long as the product exists, the product backlog also exists. So just keep this line in mind. Next question. How do time boxes help the Scrum team? Let's see. So the time boxes help to minimize risk by creating opportunity to validate whatever was developed in the sprint using feedback from users and stakeholders. So basically time box will be there, so it will just what you can say, it will minimize risk as well as it will create opportunity to validate basically what was developed in the sprint, and also it helps in active feedback from the users and the stakeholders, right? Question 32. The product owner manages the product backlog. Who is accountable for estimating the effort to complete the product backlog items? Let's check. So these are the developers. So they will provide an estimate of how much story points they need for their respective work in the sprint. Going to next question. What are the typical activities for a product owner in a sprint? Let's check. So first he will collaborate with the stakeholders, right, and subject matter experts, and secondly he will work with developers on product backlog refinement. Going to next question. Why the definition of done is important? Let's check. So first it creates transparency regarding the progress within the Scrum team, right, and second it establishes the quality, the expected quality which will be delivered in the sprint. So these 2 points are there, which is a kind of a which tells why the definition of done is important. Going to next question. The developers find out during the sprint that they are not likely to build what they forecast. What can be done? Let's check. So the scope can be clarified and renegotiated between the product owner and developers as more is learned. So basically the product owner and developers can set up a meeting and they can redefine the scope. Question 36. The product owner's authority to change and update the product backlog is unlimited. Let's check whether this is true or false. So this is true. Entire team should respect his decision. So basically the product owner has full authority on the product backlog. Question 37. The value delivered by a product can only be determined by revenue. Is this true or false? Let's check. This is false. So there are other ways to measure the product value like customer satisfaction, user engagement, and others. Question 38. What variables should a product owner consider when ordering the product backlog? Let's see. So anything which helps to achieve the product goals and value maximization. So anything which is related to product success and maximizing its value, those things he will take it into the product backlog. Question 39. Is it mandatory for the product owner to monitor and share progress of the product backlog by using any particular method? So the answer is no. So there are various practices in the sprint. These are burn downs, burn ups, or cumulative flows. He can use any method. It's not mandatory that he has to select just one of the methods. Question 40. To create focus, which things are most important to have ready when sprint planning begins? Let's check. A product goal should be there and it should be discussed by the product owner. Secondly, a product backlog should be there. So these two are the prerequisites which should be there. Question 41. The length of a sprint should be. So these are the answers for it. The sprint should be short enough to keep business risk acceptable. Secondly, it should be short enough to synchronize the development work. And thirdly, maximum it can be of 1 month, but it should be less than that. Question 42. What does it mean to say that an event has a time box? Let's see. The event should not take more than the allotted time. So whenever an event is time boxed, it should not exceed beyond that particular time period. So simple thing, right? Question 43. The time box for daily scrum, so it's 15 minutes. Question 44. When might a sprint be abnormally cancelled? Let's check. When the sprint goal becomes obsolete. So when the sprint goal will become invalid, then the sprint can be cancelled. Question 45. When does the next sprint begin? So immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. So when the previous sprint is over, immediately the next sprint begins. Question 46. Scrum has a role called project manager. Let's check. So this is false. In Scrum we don't have any role called as a project manager. Question 47. The sprint backlog is fully formulated and cannot be changed during the sprint. So the answer is false. We can change the sprint backlog. It's flexible. It's not a fixed thing. Question 48. What are the two ways a Scrum Master serves to enable effective Scrum teams? Let's check. So first, he facilitates developers' decision-making capacity. Secondly, by removing any kind of a hinder which comes in the way of Scrum team. So these two are the main roles of a Scrum Master. Question 49. Can the product owner and Scrum Master be the same person? Let's check. Yes, they both can be a same person, but it is not recommended because then a single person will have to do a lot of things in the team, right? And he might miss out on something. So basically, yes, they can be the same person. The product owner and Scrum Master can be the same person, but it is not recommended. Question 50. When many Scrum teams are working on a single product, what best describes the definition of done? Let's check. So all Scrum teams must have a definition of done that makes their combined incremental value and useful. So the different teams should have just one definition of done, right? Going to next question. What is empiricism? So this is the principle on which Scrum is based. Let's check. So empiricism is the idea that all learning comes from only experience and observation. So just keep a note of this one. So whenever we will do something, we will learn the process, and this is what empiricism means. So the example is tasting a food. So you will learn whether you like a particular dish such as pizza or sushi by tasting it rather than being told how it tastes. So someone will tell you that let's say sushi, the pizza will taste very good, but only when you will eat it and you will feel it, then only you will get to know how basically pizza tastes. So this is the concept. Question 52. Time box for each ceremony in a sprint. Let's see. So these are the various ceremonies and their time boxes. Please note this down, and this will be there in the examination. So the daily scrum is for 15 minutes. The sprint planning, it is of 8 hours for a monthly sprint. For shorter sprints, it is usually shorter. Sprint review, it is 4 hours for a monthly sprint, and for shorter sprints it will be shorter. And sprint retrospective, it is 3 hours or less. Question 53. What are the different scrum ceremonies? Let's see. So these are the different ceremonies. We will have sprint planning, we will have daily scrum, we will have a sprint review, sprint retrospective, and product backlog refinement. Question 54. Is backlog refinement a time boxed event in Scrum? So the answer is no, it's not a time boxed event. Question 55, who creates the definition of done? The answer is the organization or the Scrum team will create the definition of done. Question 56, when can the product backlog be updated? Answer, at any time when done by the product owner or a delegate. So basically a product owner can update the product backlog anytime, or if the product owner maybe is on a leave or he's on a vacation, then he can provide this responsibility to a particular team member and then he can update the product backlog in his absence. Question 57, how important is it for a product owner to order product backlog items by using value points? Let's check. The product owner may order the product backlog by using value points or select any other technique. So basically it's not required that he uses value points, he can use any technique to do the process. Question 58, which two statements explains why the definition of done is important to the product owner? Let's see. So first, it establishes the expected quality of the increment, right? And secondly, it creates transparency regarding progress within the Scrum team. So just keep these things in mind. Question 59, adaptation requires regular inspection. In what ways does the product owner contribute to the result achieved by inspection? Let's see. So first, the product owner shares the current state of product backlog at sprint review, right? Which when combined with inspection of the increments leads to an updated product backlog. And secondly, the product owner invites stakeholders to sprint review to learn how the current state of the market influence, which is the most valuable thing to do next. So basically the product owner is in direct connect with business and stakeholders, and taking their feedback right into the team, he helps to achieve the following processes. Question 60, what are typical activities for a product owner in a sprint? Let's see. So first, he will work with developers on product backlog refinement, and secondly, he will collaborate with stakeholders, user communities and subject matter experts. So these will be the activities of a product owner. Question 61, how does an organization know that a product built using Scrum is successful? So by frequent releases and taking the feedback from customer users, they kind of know how their product is behaving in the real world. Question 62, what phrases best describe the relationship of the product owner and the developers? Let's see. So they collaborate often so that the developers build increment keeping end users and stakeholder concerns in mind. And secondly, they collaborate often so the product owner can make informed decisions in balancing effort and value of product backlog items. So basically the product owner and developers will have frequent meetings. So first, in the first meetings, the product owner can provide them the feedback which they are getting from the stakeholders and the end users. And in the second meeting, basically the developers can provide them the required estimate they will require to kind of deliver an increment, which will help into the product backlog refinement, right? Question 63, what two things best help the product owner manage the value of a product? Let's see. So the first is the order of the product backlog, and second is validating assumptions of value through frequent releases. So which is nothing but the feedback he's getting from the stakeholders. Question 64, what variables should a product owner consider when ordering the product backlog? Let's see. Anything that informs them to achieve the product goals and to optimize the value delivered. So if anything which is helping to achieve the product goal and maximize its value, so those things will be there in the product backlog. Question 65, what is product backlog? So the product backlog is an emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. Question 66, what is pair programming? So basically pair programming is basically simple. The two developers will write their code and they will write the code together, and they will also do the peer review together. So this is what is called as a pair programming. Question 67, should user stories be part of the documentation generated by a Scrum team? Let's check. So yeah, if this is agreed in the definition of done, So then they should be a part of the documentation. If it is not in the definition of done, then they do not need to document it. Question 68. Who is responsible for the system architecture of a product being developed using Scrum? So it's the developers. Question 69. What's the value of refactoring code? Let's see. So refactoring code will basically improve the readability and maintainability of the code base. Question 70. What relationship does Scrum have to technical practices? Let's see. So Scrum teams will, with excellent technical practice, will likely be more successful. So Scrum teams where all the technical practices are followed regularly and effectively, they will be more successful than other teams. Going to next question. Who should be present during product backlog refinement? So anyone that the Scrum team decides will be valuable during refinement. So anyone can join the meeting if they can provide their value into the product backlog refinement. Question 72. Which statement describes how often the build should be executed? Let's see. Whenever new or modified code is pushed to the version control system, this is generally implemented using CI/CD pipelines. So whenever a developer will push their respective codes to the version control system is nothing but GitHub or any other version control system, then the build should get executed using the CI/CD pipelines. Question 73. Product backlog items are refined by. So it's the whole Scrum team, right? Question 74. While changing software, you find a bug in previous delivered piece of functionality. What should you do? So the answer will be fix the bug if it's critical or easily fixed. Otherwise, put the new bug into product backlog to be prioritized and fixed in an upcoming sprint. So if the bug can be fixed, then we should go ahead and fix it. Else we should mark that particular bug into the product backlog and it can be taken into the upcoming sprints. Question 75. When are individuals with testing and quality expertise included in the software development effort? Let's check. So from the beginning and throughout all sprints. So from the very beginning, software testers are basically there into the role. Question 76. Which types of test can be automated? Let's see. So these are a few test types which can be automated. So these are unit, performance, integration, smoke, and functional. Question 77. What is the technical depth? So technical depth, let's see. So technical depth is a term which represents consequences of poor technical choices. And what can be examples of technical depth? We have these things. So if we are using hard-coded values in the code, and if we are skipping some unit testing, right, and if we are not doing the code refactoring correctly, or we are choosing quick fix over robust design, so these will eventually cause technical debt. Question 78. The definition of done describes the work that must be completed for every product backlog item. What should the developers do during the sprint if they find a problem outside of their control that is blocking them from delivering work? Let's see. So they should raise this concern immediately with the Scrum Master, right? And then the Scrum Master will figure out how he can resolve this particular situation. Question 79. Only technical writers can create documentation during a sprint. Let's check. So this is false. While technical writers are often specialized in the documentation, right, but basically anyone, developers, testers, product owners, other team members can contribute into this particular thing. Question 80. Which of the following best describes continuous integration? So it's a software development practice where developers integrate and verify their work frequently, often multiple times each day to detect integration errors as quickly as possible. So this is what continuous integration is basically used for. Question 81. What are ways developer can ensure a good application architecture in Scrum? Let's see. First, the developers plan some time each sprint to discuss the architecture needed. And secondly, the Scrum team should have a set of guidelines or principles that each developer should understand and follow while writing the code. Question 82. When do the developers participate in product backlog refinement? So anytime during the sprint, right? Question 83. When a continuous integration build fails, who ideally ensures the build is repaired? So whoever the developer agrees to fix it. Basically some developer will fix it, and whoever is the responsible developer who agrees that he will fix it, basically it's his responsibility to do the work. Question 84. Which is the benefit of establishing naming standards for code? Let's see. To make the code more readable, so the code will be more easy to understand if we are using these standards. Question 85. What happens during sprint 0? So this is a tricky question, right? So there is nothing which is called as a sprint 0, so just keep this in mind. Question 86. What's the main reason for the Scrum Master to be at the daily Scrum? So the answer is they do not have to be there. Say they only need to ensure that the developers have a daily Scrum. So basically the daily Scrum is for the developers, and Scrum Master basically is not there in the meeting. Question 87. An organization has decided to adopt Scrum, but management wants to change the terminology. Is it a good idea? So the answer is no. When should a developer on a Scrum team be replaced? So answer is as needed, and we just have to take into account a short-term reduction in productivity, right? Question 89. Is it responsibility of Scrum Master to check if daily Scrum is kept within the 15 minutes time box? The answer is yes. So it's the responsibility of Scrum Master to check if the daily Scrum is within 15 minutes. Next question. The CEO asks the developers to add a very important item to a sprint that is in progress. What should the developers do? So the developers will discuss this thing with the other members of the Scrum team, and then basically they can decide whether the item should be accepted or not. Question 91. What are two ways a Scrum Master serves to enable effective Scrum teams? Let's see. First, he encourages developer decision making. Secondly, by removing hinders in the Scrum team. So these are the two functionalities of the Scrum Master. Question 92. Which two things should the Scrum team do during the first sprint? First, they should deliver an increment of useful and valuable product in the first sprint. Secondly, they should develop and deliver at least one piece of functionality. Question 93. The developer should have all the skills needed to. Let's see what skills they should need. So the developer should have all the skills to turn the product backlog items they select into an increment of useful and valuable product functionality. So the developer should have all the skills so that they can pick up a product backlog item, they can develop it, do the coding part, and then they can deliver it basically to the production. So these skills should be there in the developer. Question 94. To create focus, which of the following are most important to have ready when sprint planning begins? Let's see. First, a sprint goal should be there. Secondly, a product backlog should be there. Right. Question 95, true or false? A first sprint can start before the product owner has a complete and exhaustive product backlog in place. So this is, I guess this is true. Yeah, right. So the product backlog is never complete. It's a kind of a emerging list, as you already know. So the first sprint will anyhow start and the product backlog, maybe it should be incomplete at that particular time period. Question 96. Again, it's a true or false question. Let's see. The product owner is not only accountable for development and release of a product, but also the cost of maintaining and operating the product over its lifetime. So this is true. Question 97. Which description best fits the role of the product owner? Let's see. He's a value maximizer. Question 98. What should developers do if the product owner is unavailable? So the answer is, within the sprint, the developers make the best decision possible to ensure progress towards the sprint goal, realigning with the product owner once they are available again. So basically, there are two things to be done. First is the developers will do their respective job to kind of deliver the products, and secondly, whenever the product owner is back, they will set up a meeting and just convey the things to him. Question 99. Is the product owner required to be present at the sprint retrospective? The answer is yes, their attendance is mandatory. Question 100. What best describes the relationship of the product owner and the stakeholders? So the answer is, the product owner actively asks for stakeholders' input and expectations to incorporate into the product backlog. So the product owner is very much engaged with the business and stakeholders, and he always asks for their input and expectations. Question 101. What are typical activities for a product owner in a sprint? So first, he will collaborate with stakeholders, user communities and subject matter experts. Secondly, he will work with developers on product backlog refinement. Question 102. Who is responsible for the system architecture of a product being developed using Scrum? So it's the developers. Question 103. Which are attributes of a good bug report? So bug report is nothing but raising whenever a software tester raises a bug. Let's see what are the good attributes of it. So these are the attributes. It should be simple and it should have all the steps written properly. Secondly, the expected results and the observed results should be noted down. It should have clear title and it should be one bug per report. It should include the build version, right, of the software which was tested, and it should have the screenshots or the pictures which will help in identifying the bug. Question 104. When do the developers participate in product backlog refinement? So anytime during the sprint. Question 105. Should user stories be part of the documentation generated by a Scrum team? So yes, if they are a part of DoD or definition of done. Question 106. Which of the following are attributes of a bad bug report or a defect report? Let's see. First is generic titles. They will not have very descriptive titles, and they will have vague statements or untested assumptions, and there will be a lot of assigning blame, like they will assign a particular bug to a particular developer. So these things are not a good practice. Okay, so that's all which we had for the PSM-1 examination. So you guys just go through these questions and then appear for the examination. And one thing, this is the link which I have. I will just try to open this particular link here. Let me open it into the browser. Just a second. Okay, this is the link, right? Just go to it, go to this particular link, and you will see there will be something called as an open assessment. So here you will have various open assessments. So in order to clear the PSM-1 examination, I would request you to go for this Scrum Open. Just go for this particular assessment, then go for the product owner open assessment, and then go for the Scrum Developer Open Assessment. So these three, I will just provide a note. I will also include it into the description. So this is the main link, and then just practice exams for practice online exam for below. So just practice for Scrum Open, right? And then the product owner open, and then the Scrum Developer open. Correct. So whenever you will go over here and you will click on, let's say, the Scrum Open, this type of a page will get opened, and you can say start assessment, right? And here you will get 30 questions, and basically it's the same as a PSM-1 examination, and you can just click on continue, and you can answer each and every question over here, and you can submit the examination. And also this particular examination will tell you how much you scored, and basically what questions you did right and what questions were wrong. So basically just try to give these three examinations, and this will help in your better preparation. So I will just include these things in the video description. And just one thing, also go through the Scrum guide. So let me check if you can open over here and just write Scrum guide. Let's say Scrum guide, you will get a Scrum guide, right? It will be a kind of a PDF, you can download it and let it download, and then just try to read it once, or maybe you can go through the audio. So in YouTube itself you can search for the PSM-1 Scrum guide audio, and then go through that particular video and then appear for the examination. So you will basically, it's a quite easy examination and you will master that one. So all the best for your examination, and we'll meet soon. Thanks.